Hello, everybody. Sean here again. Just wanted to sort of reach out and probably do a little bit of venting about pipelines. Pipelines, yes. So, uh, what your friendly neighborhood environmentalist will tell you are not evil. They're not going to destroy the world. Really, what they are is a trench with some steel pipe in it through which oil or gas moves to market. You can even put diesel through them or gasoline. The stuff that we need for our society to function goes through pipelines. And my guess is out of the 100 million barrels per day that the world makes, a huge amount of that moves through a pipe every single day. Very small amount of it gets spilled. What gets spilled, at least in Canada, gets cleaned up right quick. Anyways, just wanted to get that bit off my chest. The way these things have developed, you'd think pipelines are the end of the world, but only in Canada, of course. They're fine in the USA where they're building them at a rock and pace down in the Permian in Texas. They're fine in Russia. They're fine in Mexico. TransCanada's building them in Mexico. No problems there. But for some reason, we can't build them in Canada. It wasn't always that way. Not that long ago, we could still build pipelines. We were building them down to the States. Keystone, the regular Keystone, got built under Harper, right down to Tidewater. For those people who say Harper didn't build anything to Tidewater, Google Keystone, guys. Google Keystone. Also built Alberta Clipper to Lake Superior, which is pretty much as good as Tidewater. And so within 10 years, that situation's changed where not only is it hard to build pipelines, we can't build any. Give you a quick rundown on the proposed pipeline projects over the last couple years. Northern Gateway, the NEB under Harper approved Northern Gateway. Justin Trudeau denied the approval. So no Northern Gateway. That'd be good. It'd be good to be shipping oil to China right about now, wouldn't it? How about Kinder Morgan expansion? Well, that one hit a bit of a wall. Now the federal government owns Kinder Morgan, and they missed another construction season. So, and also they're caught up in court battles on that one, and I just don't know how that's going to get resolved, if it ever does. I think the feds are going to buy time, and then after the next election, just put it to death. And you might say that's cynical of me, but hey, you convince me otherwise. My mind is open. Energy East. So this is probably the weakest of the projects because it'd be quite expensive, and it really doesn't pay to build a pipe that long when we should be able to ship it, to Chicago rather than Montreal and New Brunswick, or to the West Coast so that it can go to China. However, this project was also killed. TransCanada walked on it because the federal government kept on changing the rules. And if there's one thing businesses hate, it's uncertainty. So they sunk a few $1 billions into that project and dusted their hands of it rather than sink a few billion more. So anyways, that's a quick summary of those projects there. Now for a bit of extra context, I'd just like to say that the Chinese National Oil Company bought Nexen, a major Canadian producer, a few years ago. And I think they bought it under the tacit assumption that they could get some of that product over to China. So that's looking like a bad bet right now. And I should note, okay, so that's pipelines. So pipelines are not happening in Canada right now. And as a result of this, we're trying to move more oil than we can possibly move by pipe. So we're moving it by rail. Now we've maxed out how much we can move by rail. So what happens is the price that we can get for it in Canada has absolutely collapsed to where it's about 40 or $50 below the world price. So below what they're selling it for in Texas, below what they're selling it for in Russia, below what they're selling it for in Oman. We're way, way below. The reason being, we got a bottleneck going, and the guys who are moving oil or buying the oil at the pinch point are saying, okay, who wants to sell us some oil? A whole bunch of hands shoot up. They say, okay, well, we'll buy for 29. And then the sellers basically say, I need to move this oil. I'll sell to you for 28. I'll sell for 27. I'll sell for 26. It's a race to the bottom. That's why we're getting $12 for oil. $12. It's barely even worth it. I don't even know the numbers on that side of things, how the guys are evening out on this and why it's still moving, but there you have it. We're still moving pretty close to 3 million barrels per day. So the net effect of this is not only Canadian producers aren't really making any money, and then Canadian governments aren't really making any money because it's pretty hard to charge royalties on companies that aren't making profits and really collect any tax. They're not making any profits, right? So Canada's hurting to the tune of $80 million a day. So you say to me, Sean, okay, brilliant idea. I'm sure no one's thought of this. If we can't move it by pipe, if we can't move it by train, let's refine it in Alberta. And so, I agree. I think that there is some logic to that. The issue is there's a few issues with doing that in Alberta. First, there's excess refining capacity elsewhere, down in Texas, in Chicago, in China, and they can actually use some of our types of oil there because there's advantages to having a little sulfur in it, I believe. But if it's such a good case, if it's a brilliant economic case to refine it in Alberta, why don't they just do that? And there is some refining in Alberta, but there's not really much refining on the drawing board. And can you think of any reasons why? One of the reasons is a lot of the products would have to be moved by pipe or by rail, and those are sort of maxed out. That's a reason. Second, I mentioned before, pipeline capacity. Third, refineries. We would need to add refineries to refine much more than we're doing right now. So, as far as I know, there's no plans on the books that are ongoing right now to add any refining capacity. The Sturgeon Refinery, which is sort of a joint venture between the Alberta government and Canadian Natural, is close, but they've had a few issues and they're working those out. I don't know quite when they're going to be online. So that will be good when they can suck up a few. I don't know how many barrels they can do, 55 or 60,000 when they get rolling. That will be good. But it won't really solve the problem. And then you look at the other refining capacity. If you go east of Edmonton and drive around, you'll notice there's a few blocks. I think it's all the way up to a township that are more or less empty of farmhouses. And what's happened is this land has been bought up for refineries. People who bought it are Statoil, Total. I think Imperial wanted to add. I forget there was four proposed refineries. They bought up a whole bunch of land, got worked on these things, and they've walked away. Now there's one refinery that a Chinese company is thinking of doing, but a friend of mine who knows about these things told me that their budget isn't looking very realistic, so he's not confident they're going to go through with it. And their plan, if you can believe it, would be to refine the oil. First of all, build a refinery with Chinese labor, largely build a labor camp, build a refinery, and then rail the diesel and stuff like that to the coast and ship it to China. So wouldn't really, sort of a funny effect that would have there. Also, he doesn't think the economics are there. The other 4 of the 5 walked. So why would they walk? Think about it. Well, one reason, Alberta, labor is expensive. Environmental regulatory issues are huge, and they're growing every day. I'd like to add to that, refiners in Alberta, unless they work out some side deal with the government, are going to be paying carbon tax. And a lot of carbon goes into refining. Imagine that. It's a pretty heat intensive process. Uh, and there you go. So they're going to be paying carbon tax. You're not paying it in Chicago. You're not paying it in Texas. Not paying it in China. So why set up shop here? There's no case for it. And so no one is really doing it, save for the government refinery. So there you go. And so here's the situation. So Alberta's industry is really hurting. A lot of our companies are moving south. Rigs are moving south. Workers are moving south. My friends, for instance, a lot of them, some of them moved to Vancouver. Some moved to Toronto because they want to make money. They got families to feed, and it's harder and harder to do that in the private sector in Calgary. So the industry is in crisis, and there's no way around that. Now, in fairness, when the point of having a government is to work together as a nation. And, in Alberta, we've been happy to do that over the years. We've paid into equalization. People are going to rip my head off for saying that. The long and the short of it is that that's true. You can give me any pedantic way of slicing it, but Alberta does pay in. The system was designed to equalize regions, and we've been paying in pretty much the whole time. And the only thing we've got in return at this point is opposition to our pipeline projects from provincial governments, municipal governments, and no steady hand at the NEB or at the federal government to sort these disputes out. So the issue is this. When does a hockey game get really dangerous? When does a hockey game get dangerous? When does a fight get dangerous? Fight gets dangerous, or a hockey game gets dangerous when there's no respect for the referee. Okay? Because then you're testing the referee. I'll try a cheap shot. Got away with it. Then the other team says, screw that guy. Cheap shot back. Crank it up a notch. Back. Then you're fighting in the stands. Okay? That's the role of the NEB. That's the role of the federal government, is to sort out these disputes, keep everybody in line, and avoid the tragedy of the anti-commons, which is having municipalities veto projects that are in the national interest. That's why you have the NEB. That's why you have the federal government backstopping that to make sure stuff can get done and not be held up by the mayor of some podunk town. Now, the mayor of podunk town does have a right to be heard. That's why the NEB has its extensive consultation process, which apparently needs to get more and more extensive every time there's a pipeline proposal. Because apparently the process for the consultation process for the Kinder Morgan expansion was not big enough, even though they spent God knows how much time and money on that. More so than was spent on Northern Gateway. So again, it's sort of a race to the bottom in terms of how much money do you want to spend on this thing. Is it easier just to cut bait and go down to Mexico? Got to deal with your employees getting kidnapped, but you can get stuff built, keep the shareholders happy. So anyways, that's where we're at. Zero federal leadership, bickering among the provinces, a huge gaping, whooshing sound of money that's just flowing down south. That's the ultimate irony of this. The environmentalists are so happy to block this project. And the net effect is that they're boosting Donald Trump's economy. Great work, Greenpeace. Great work. You're giving money to Donald Trump. You're making his economy look good on the backs of Canadians, the backs of Canadian nurses, on the backs of Canadian teachers. Great work. Give yourself a pat on the back, Mike Edema, Greenpeace, Dogwood Institute, Pembina Institute, all you rent seekers. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Anyways, it's just, I try not to get too bitter about it, and, we're working away on it on local politics and all that, and hoping for some good election results here. But ultimately, it really does make you think about what the purpose of being in Canada is, and how long it's going to last, how long Alberta's going to take it, and whether it's time to explore some of their options. Whether that might be withdrawing from EI, or pushing it further. Every day now, I'm hearing talk of separatism. I think that might be a little extreme right now, but it's really time to think good and hard about what we're doing in Canada and the state of our confederation. And naturally, our federal government is waging war on straws, plastic straws, while we face this huge crisis. But just remember that when you vote next time, vote for the guys who are going to go fight for you and do actual real work and make this country work, not the morons who are chasing plastic straws, who are running around the world at every conference trying to get on some UN panel. Anyways, just remember that when you vote, remember that when you give money, remember that when you're out knocking doors. Anyways, hope I haven't been too much of a downer. It's all good. I'm a pretty sunny guy by disposition. And, keep smiling and we'll keep grinding away. It all works out good in the end, right? Anyways, I hope that you're having a good night. We'll talk soon. Bye now.